The massive cargo ship Stellar Whisper drifted silently through the stars, its sleek purple hull gleaming under distant suns. Inside the ship's main control room, Captain Blue stood tall, his four arms moving quickly across the control panels. His crystalline skin reflected the red warning lights that had suddenly started flashing across every screen. "Status report," he commanded, his voice steady despite the growing concern in his silver eyes. The ship's cargo hold contained enough medical supplies to save millions of lives on the outer colonies, and they were already behind schedule. First Officer Green looked up from her station, her antenna twitching nervously. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the trading route ahead. 3 ships have already reported complete navigation failures." The main screen showed their planned route through space, now covered with angry red warning markers. A massive quantum storm had formed right in their path, its swirling purple and black clouds growing larger by the minute. This was no ordinary space storm. Quantum storms were known for breaking the very laws of physics themselves. "The AI navigation system is suggesting a retreat," Officer Red reported from the engineering station. His scaled hands flew across the controls as he tried to make sense of the readings. "But the alternate routes would add 7 days to our journey. The medical supplies won't stay stable that long." Captain Blue's crystalline fingers tapped thoughtfully on the armrest of his command chair. Their ship, the Stellar Whisper, was the pride of the Centaurian fleet. Its AI systems were the most advanced in known space. Its hull was built from materials that could withstand the heat of a dying sun, and its crew was handpicked from the best the galaxy had to offer. But none of that seemed to matter as the quantum storm grew before them, defying all predicted patterns. "Run a Level 5 diagnostic on the navigation systems," Blue ordered. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." The bridge crew worked in tense silence, the only sounds being the soft beeping of computers and the low hum of the ship's engines. Outside their viewports, the quantum storm's edges began to shimmer with impossible colors, colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge went dark. The gentle hum of the AI system fell silent. "What just happened?" Blue demanded, rising from his chair. Red scales had turned a pale yellow, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Captain, the quantum interference. It's unlike anything in our database. The AI tried to analyze the storm patterns, and, well, it seems to have shut itself down completely." Green's antenna went rigid, a clear sign of shock. "That's impossible. The AI has 15 levels of backup systems. Run them," Blue ordered. "Run them all." One by one, they tried every backup system the ship possessed. One by one, each system failed to activate. The quantum storm had somehow interfered with the very core of their advanced technology. "Captain," Green said softly, "we should contact Central Command. Without our navigation systems." She didn't need to finish. Everyone on the bridge knew what it meant. Their ship was effectively blind, sitting at the edge of a growing quantum storm that violated the laws of physics. Behind them lay safety, but also the knowledge that millions would die without the medical supplies they carried. Ahead lay the storm, unpredictable, deadly, and now completely impossible to navigate with their advanced systems. Captain Blue stared at the swirling chaos visible through the bridge viewport. His people, the Centaurians, had achieved their place in the galaxy by building the most advanced AI systems ever known. They had thought themselves beyond the need for primitive manual control or risky organic decision-making. Now, faced with this crisis, he realized how dependent they had become on their technology. "Send out a general distress call," he finally ordered. "We need help, and may the stars forgive us, we need it fast." The crew exchanged worried glances as Green sent out the signal. Asking for help was not the Centaurian way. But as the quantum storm grew ever larger on their viewport, they knew they had no choice. Somewhere out there, they needed to find someone who could guide them through this impossible situation. someone who could do what their advanced AI could not. The emergency meeting room of the Stellar Whisper hummed with nervous energy as Captain Blue faced his senior staff. The ship's crystal walls usually glowed with a calm blue light, but now they pulsed with an anxious yellow that reflected the crew's mood. "Our options are limited," Blue said, his four hands clasped behind his back. "The quantum storm grows stronger every hour. We cannot go back, and we cannot stay here." First Officer Green's antenna twitched as she spoke up. "Sir, I've reviewed all known records of quantum storm encounters. There's something unusual in the database." The captain turned all four of his eyes toward her. "Explain." Green touched her control panel, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a small ship dancing through a quantum storm, moving in ways that seemed to defy physics itself. "This footage is from 3 years ago," she said. "A human cargo pilot named Jack flew through a Class 5 quantum storm to save a stranded mining crew. The human ignored all standard protocols, but—" She paused, her antenna drooping slightly. "But they succeeded." The room erupted in whispers. Officer Red's scales flickered between orange and green as he spoke. "A human, operating a ship manually in a quantum storm. That's suicide." "And yet they lived," Blue said quietly. He watched the hologram replay, studying the small ship's wild but somehow graceful movements. "Where is this pilot now?" Green's fingers danced across her control panel. "After the incident, they left formal space service. They live alone on a small station near the Edge territories. The human. They were criticized for breaking too many safety protocols during the rescue. Even though they saved everyone, their methods were considered too risky." Captain Blue walked slowly around the hologram, watching the human ship dance through the chaos. His people, the Centaurians, had long prided themselves on their technology and their careful, logical approach to space travel. The thought of asking a human, especially one known for breaking protocols, made his crystalline skin dim with discomfort. "Sir," Officer Red spoke up, his scales now a deep purple of concern, "requesting human assistance would be unprecedented. Our ship's systems are far too advanced and delicate for their primitive methods." Blue touched the hologram, freezing it on an image of the human ship performing an impossible turn through the storm's heart. "And yet our advanced systems lie dead, while this human's primitive method succeeded." The room fell silent. Through the windows, they could see the quantum storm growing, its impossible colors reaching out like hungry fingers toward their ship. Somewhere in the cargo hold below, precious medical supplies were slowly becoming less stable with each passing hour. "Send the request," Blue finally ordered. "Contact the Human Space Federation. Tell them we need their pilot." Green's antenna went rigid with shock. "Sir, are you certain? This goes against every protocol we have. And this human, they're known to be difficult, unpredictable. They haven't even flown a large ship in years. Protocol will not save the lives waiting for our medical supplies," Blue replied firmly. "And unpredictable may be exactly what we need to survive this storm." As the crew dispersed to carry out his orders, Blue remained in the room, watching the hologram replay again and again. The human's flight pattern made no logical sense. It violated dozens of known safety parameters and ignored basic physics principles. Yet something about it spoke to him, hinting at an understanding of space that went beyond mere numbers and calculations. "Computer," he said softly, "download all available information about this human pilot named Jack. I want to know everything about the person we're trusting with our lives." As the computer began its search, Blue watched the quantum storm outside grow ever larger. He had just broken centuries of Centaurian tradition by asking for outside help. Now all he could do was hope that this human's infamous disregard for protocol would prove to be their salvation rather than their doom. The transport beam shimmered in the Stellar Whisper's main hangar, materializing into a tall human figure. Jack wore an old flight suit covered in handmade modifications, patches of different materials, extra pockets filled with tools, and a scratched helmet tucked under one arm. The human's boots made a solid thunk against the pristine crystal floor, the sound echoing through the silence. Captain Blue, First Officer Green, and Officer Red stood waiting, their postures stiff with formal Centaurian protocol. They watched as Jack looked around the hangar, whistling softly at the advanced technology surrounding them. "Nice ship," Jack said, voice carrying a casual tone that made Green's antenna twitch with disapproval. "But you've got some serious problems with your power distribution. I could hear it in the hull harmonics as I beamed in." Red's scales flashed orange with surprise. "Impossible. Our systems are perfectly calibrated." Jack walked over to the nearest wall panel, pressing an ear against it. "Maybe by your computer's standards, but this baby's singing in all the wrong keys. No wonder your eye crashed when it hit the quantum storm." Blue stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the hangar lights. "You claim to hear problems in our ship that our advanced systems cannot detect." "Captain," Jack said, standing up straight but maintaining that casual smile, "machines can only understand what they're programmed to understand. But space," the human tapped the side of their head, "space talks to you, if you know how to listen." Green moved closer to Blue, lowering her voice. "Sir, this human is clearly unstable. They're talking about space as if it's alive." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Blue responded quietly, watching as Jack continued to move around the hangar, touching panels and listening to walls. The human stopped at a control terminal, fingers flying over the alien interface with surprising speed. "Your navigation systems are too rigid. They're trying to calculate every quantum possibility instead of flowing with the storm patterns. It's like trying to count every drop in a river instead of learning to swim." Red moved to stop Jack from touching the controls, but Blue held up one of his 4 hands. "Explain," the captain commanded. Jack pulled out a small tool from one of many pockets and pointed it at the display. "Look here, your eye sees the quantum storm as a math problem to solve. But these storms, they're more like music. They have rhythms, patterns. Sure, they're chaotic, but there's a flow to the chaos." The human brought up a visualization of the storm, fingers tracing the swirling patterns. "See these energy spikes? They're not random. They're echoes, resonating with each other. If you try to calculate their exact positions, you'll fail every time. But if you learn to feel their rhythm—" "This is absurd," Green interrupted. "Captain, we cannot seriously consider this intuitive approach. Our ships have always operated on precise calculations and proven protocols." Jack turned to face her, expression serious for the first time since arriving. "And how's that working out for you right now?" The hangar fell silent except for the distant hum of the ship's engines. Through the large observation windows, they could see the quantum storm growing larger, its impossible colors casting strange shadows across their faces. "Show me the bridge," Jack said finally. "I need to see your control systems. And someone bring me a cup of coffee. Real coffee, not that synthesized stuff. We're going to need to make some changes if we want to get through this alive." Blue nodded slowly, his crystalline form shifting colors slightly as he made his decision. "Officer Red, escort our guest to the bridge. Officer Green, please arrange for the humans. Coffee." As they walked toward the bridge, Jack continued touching walls and listening to the ship, mumbling about harmonics and resonance patterns. The Centaurian crew exchanged worried glances, their orderly world of numbers and protocols being challenged by this human's strange methods. But as the quantum storm's light filled the corridors with its otherworldly glow, they all knew they had run out of options. Their ship's fate now rested in the hands of someone who saw space not as an equation to be solved, but as a dance to be learned. The bridge of the Stellar Whisper had never seen anything quite like this. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by open panels and scattered tools, drinking the 5th cup of coffee, while Officer Red watched in growing distress. "You can't just rewire the main navigation console." Red's scales flickered between stress yellow and anger red. "These systems are worth more than an entire human space station." Jack didn't look up, hands steady as they connected different circuits. Your expensive systems are thinking too much. Sometimes the best computer is right here. The human tapped their forehead with a grease-stained finger. Captain Blue entered the bridge, his crystalline form reflecting the strange lights from the quantum storm outside. "Report," he commanded. "The human is dismantling our ship," Red said, his scales now fully red, "and drinking excessive amounts of stimulants." Jack finally looked up, grinning. "Actually, I'm teaching your ship to dance. See, your eye tries to process every quantum possibility at once. But that's like trying to predict every raindrop in a hurricane. We need to feel the storm's rhythm instead." The human stood up and walked to the main viewport, gesturing at the swirling chaos outside. "Look at that pattern there. See how it pulses? That's not random. It's like a heartbeat. Your computers see millions of calculations, but I see music." Blue moved closer to the viewport, his four eyes studying the storm. "You believe you can navigate through that using feelings." "Not just feelings," Jack said, returning to the open panel. "Experience, knowledge, instinct. Humans have been reading storms since we first took to the seas on Earth. Sure, this storm's bigger and quantum-based, but chaos is chaos. It follows patterns if you know how to look." Red watched in horror as Jack connected a manual control system to the main console. "This violates every safety protocol we have. The human is installing primitive manual controls. Sometimes the old ways work best," Jack said, testing the newly installed control stick. "Your AI thinks too perfectly. Quantum storms aren't perfect. They're wild, organic. You need organic responses to handle them." Captain Blue watched silently as Jack continued the modifications. Through the viewport, they could see the storm growing stronger. The medical supplies in their cargo hold were reaching their stability limit, and millions of lives depended on their success. "Explain these modifications," Blue finally said, his voice calm despite the tension in the room. Jack pointed to different parts of the new system. "I've simplified your navigation controls. Instead of trying to calculate perfect routes, we'll feel our way through. These sensors here will give us direct feedback. Temperature, pressure, quantum fluctuations. Raw data, no AI interpretation. And this," they patted the manual control stick, "this lets us react instantly, no computer lag. And you believe this primitive system will work better than our advanced technology?" Red asked, his scales still showing his distress. Jack stood up, wiping hands on the already stained flight suit. "Your technology is amazing for normal space, but quantum storms aren't normal. They're alive, in their own way. You need human reflexes, human intuition. A computer sees chaos and tries to solve it. A human sees chaos and learns to ride it." Blue studied the modified controls, noting how Jack had managed to integrate the manual systems without completely removing their own technology. It was crude but clever, preserving their ability to switch back if needed. "How long until we can test these modifications?" the captain asked. Jack looked at the storm through the viewport, eyes narrowing slightly. "The real question is how long until we have to use them. That storm's growing faster than before. We've got maybe 2 hours before it reaches us, ready or not." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of machinery and the quiet beeping of the new sensors. They were about to attempt something unprecedented, flying one of the most advanced ships in the galaxy through a quantum storm using what amounted to manual controls and human instinct. Outside, the storm pulsed with impossible colors, as if calling them to their destiny. "Everyone strapped in?" Jack asked, hands resting lightly on the manual controls. The bridge crew had taken their positions, though none of them looked comfortable with what was about to happen. The quantum storm filled their entire view now, its swirling colors making the crystal walls of the ship shimmer with reflected light. Captain Blue sat in his command chair, all 4 hands gripping the armrests. "All sections report ready. Though I must note, nobody on this ship has ever attempted manual navigation before. First time for everything." Jack said with a grin, adjusting the old flight suit's collar. "Now, watch and learn how humans dance with chaos." The human's fingers flew across the modified controls, bringing up raw sensor data on the main screen. The quantum storm's patterns appeared as waves of color and light, unpredictable and beautiful. To the Centaurian crew, it looked like pure randomness. To Jack, it was a symphony waiting to be conducted. "Here we go," Jack said softly. "Officer Red, give me 70% power to the main engines." Red's scales flickered with anxiety as he followed the order. The massive ship began to move forward, its nose pointing toward the edge of the storm. Every crew member held their breath as they felt the first tremors of the quantum disturbance. "Sir," First Officer Green's antenna trembled. "The hull sensors are reporting impossible readings." "We should." "Ignore the readings," Jack interrupted, eyes fixed on the storm. "Look at the patterns. Feel the ship's movement. There, you see the darker swirl. That's our door." The human pulled the control stick gently to the left, and the enormous ship responded with surprising grace. They slid between two massive waves of quantum energy that would have torn apart any vessel trying to calculate a safe path through them. "Impossible," Red whispered, his scales turning pale with shock. "We should have been ripped apart by those forces." Jack's hands moved constantly, making tiny adjustments to their course. "The storm doesn't want to destroy us. It's just dancing. We just need to learn its steps." "There, feel that rhythm." The ship swayed as another quantum wave passed through them. But instead of fighting it, Jack rolled with the movement, using the wave's own energy to propel them deeper into the storm. "Warning," the ship's computer announced, its voice crackling with interference. "Hull stress exceeding recommended limits." "Those limits were made for normal space," Jack said calmly, even as warning lights flashed across every console. "Captain, I need more power to the stabilizers." Blue watched as the human guided his precious ship through the chaos with impossible skill. "Grant the human's request," he ordered. The ship dove between two colliding quantum waves, rolling sideways in a maneuver that made several crew members grab their chairs in terror. But Jack was smiling, moving with the storm as if they could actually hear the rhythm they kept talking about. "There's a pattern here," Jack explained, hands dancing across the controls. "See how the waves pulse. 3 small, 1 large, then a gap. Like a heartbeat. We just need tow." A massive quantum surge appeared directly ahead of them, its energy readings off every scale the ship possessed. "Evasive action," Green shouted, her antenna rigid with fear. "No," Jack said firmly, pointing the ship directly at the surge. "Sometimes the only way out is through. Hold on tight." The crew watched in horror as their human pilot aimed them straight at what looked like certain death. The quantum surge filled their entire view, its impossible colors burning their eyes. But Jack's hands remained steady on the controls, a look of complete concentration on their face. Just before impact, Jack pulled back hard on the controls. The massive ship arched upward like a swimmer cresting a wave, riding the quantum surge instead of fighting it. For a moment, they seemed to hang suspended between realities, the laws of physics themselves holding their breath. Then they were through, emerging on the other side of the surge into a relatively calm pocket within the storm. "See," Jack said, still focused on the controls but wearing a small smile. "The storm's not our enemy. It's our dance partner. And we've only finished the first movement." The relative calm didn't last long. The quantum storm around the stellar whisper suddenly shifted, its colors darkening to deep purples and blacks. Jack's hands tightened on the controls as new alarms blared across the bridge. "Status report," Captain Blue demanded, his crystalline form dimming with concern. Officer Red's scales had turned almost white. "Sir, the storm. It's changing. Energy levels are beyond anything in our records. The dance is getting faster," Jack muttered, eyes darting between the viewport and the sensor readings. "Much faster. Red, I need all power diverted to engines and shields. Everything else can wait." Green's antenna stretched toward the ceiling in alarm. That would include life support. We can't. A massive quantum surge slammed into the ship, throwing several crew members from their seats. Jack held onto the controls, muscles straining as they fought to keep the massive vessel stable. Life support won't matter if we're torn apart. Jack shouted over the groaning of the ship's hull. Make the call, Captain. Blue gripped his command chair, watching as reality itself seemed to twist around them. Do it, he ordered. Divert all power as the human requests. The ship's lights dimmed as power redirected to the essential systems. Jack guided them through increasingly violent quantum waves, each movement of the control stick precisely timed to the storm's chaotic rhythm. Hull breach on Deck 7. Red reported, his scales shifting rapidly between colors. Automatic seals are failing. Jack's face was covered in sweat, but their hands remained steady. The storm's reaching its peak. We're running out of time. Those medical supplies in the cargo hold. How much radiation can they take? Minimal exposure only, Blue responded. Why? Because I see our way out. Jack pointed through the viewport at a spot where the quantum energies seemed to spiral together. That's our exit point. But reaching it means crossing through a radiation pocket that'll fry every electronic system we have. The bridge fell silent except for the creaking of the hull and the blare of warning sirens. Green's antenna drooped. Without our electronic systems, we'll be flying blind. No, Jack said, a fierce light in their eyes. We'll be flying by human instinct. Sometimes you have to turn off the machines to hear the music of space itself. Another quantum surge rocked the ship. A support beam crashed down nearby, barely missing Officer Red's station. The hull groaned under the increasing pressure. Captain, Jack said urgently, I need your trust. Right now. No protocols, no calculations. Just trust. Blue looked at his failing ship, his terrified crew, and the human whose crazy methods had got them this far. His crystalline form pulsed with decision. You have it. What do you need? On my mark, shut down everything. Every system, every computer, everything except minimal life support and engine power. We're going to shoot the gap between quantum waves, but the ship's too heavy to make it unless we strip down to basics. Green's antenna whipped forward. That's suicide. We need those systems tow. The ship lurched violently as another section of hull began to buckle. Warning lights flashed across every remaining console. Now, Jack shouted. Shut it all down now. Blue's four hands moved across his command console. All crews, emergency protocol override. Shutting down all systems on my mark. 3, 2, 1. The bridge plunged into near darkness as the ship's systems went silent. Only the glow of the quantum storm and a few emergency lights remained. The massive vessel seemed to hold its breath, hanging in space between waves of reality-bending energy. Jack's hands gripped the manual controls, their voice barely a whisper. Listen to it. Feel it. The storm's not just chaos. It's the heartbeat of space itself. And right now it's showing us the way home. With no computers, no AI, and no advanced technology to guide them, the fate of the Stellar Whisper rested solely in human hands as they prepared for their final desperate gambit. In the darkness of the powered-down bridge, Jack's hands moved with deliberate grace across the manual controls. The quantum storm raged around them, its impossible colors providing the only real illumination. The massive ship, stripped of its technological advantages, hung vulnerable in the chaos. Everyone ready? Jack asked softly, eyes never leaving the viewport. Once we start this run, there's no stopping until we're through. Captain Blue's crystalline form glowed faintly in the darkness. The crew is prepared. Though I admit, flying without our systems feels like being blind. Sometimes, Jack said, beginning to move the ship forward, you have to close your eyes to really see. The Stellar Whisper accelerated toward what looked like a solid wall of quantum energy. Several crew members gripped their stations tightly, their various alien features showing signs of stress. Green's antenna curled tightly, red scales paling to almost white. Jack's voice remained calm, almost meditative. Feel that vibration in the hull. That's our rhythm. The storm's actually helping us now, pushing us where we need to go. 3 pulses, then a gap. 3 pulses, then a gap. The ship swooped and dove through the quantum waves, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for its size. Without computers plotting their course, Jack relied purely on instinct and experience, responding to each surge and wave as it came. Hull temperature critical. Red called out, reading from one of the few remaining functional gauges. Let it rise, Jack responded, executing a roll that sent them between 2 colliding quantum waves. The heat's telling us we're on the right track. Listen to the ship. She knows the way out. Through the viewport, they could see their target, a small dark spot in the storm where the quantum energies seemed to cancel each other out. But reaching it meant threading through an increasingly dense field of reality-warping energy. Impossible, Green whispered, her antenna trembling. The gap's too small. We'll never. Size doesn't matter when you're dancing with space, Jack interrupted, adjusting their course with tiny movements of the controls. Watch and learn why humans never give up. The ship shuddered as they entered the final approach. Metal groaned, crystal supports creaked, and the very air seemed to vibrate with tension. Jack's face showed intense concentration, their movements becoming one with the rhythm of the storm. Then, in one heart-stopping moment, they shot through the gap. The quantum energies passed over and around them like water breaking around a stone. For a split second, every person on the bridge saw a reality twist in ways their minds couldn't comprehend. And suddenly, they were through. Normal space stretched out before them, calm and beautiful. Behind them, the quantum storm raged harmlessly, its power no longer able to reach them. We made it, Red said in disbelief, his scales slowly returning to their normal color. The human actually did it. Captain Blue moved to the main console, his crystalline form brightening. Restore power to all systems. Begin damage assessment, and check the status of the medical supplies. As the bridge slowly came back to life, monitors flickering on and computers rebooting, Jack sat back in the pilot's seat with a tired smile. Your ship, they said to Blue, is quite a dancer. She just needed someone to show her the steps. Green approached Jack, her antenna now relaxed and swaying gently. I must admit, I was wrong about human methods. What you did was beyond our understanding, but it worked. Not beyond understanding, Jack corrected, standing up slowly. Just different. Your technology is amazing, but sometimes you need something more human. Sometimes you need to feel the rhythm instead of calculating the steps. Blue moved to stand before Jack, his crystalline form glowing with formal brightness. The medical supplies are intact. Millions will live because of what you achieved today. You have taught us something valuable about the limitations of pure technology and the power of organic intuition. Jack smiled, running a hand through sweat-dampened hair. Just doing what humans do best, taking impossible situations and turning them into victories. Now please tell me someone saved some of that coffee. After a dance like that, I could use a cup. The bridge erupted in relieved laughter, each species in their own way. As the ship's systems came fully back online and they began their journey to deliver the medical supplies, the crew of the Stellar Whisper had learned a valuable lesson about the unique strengths that different species bring to the stars. Sometimes, in the vast darkness of space, the most advanced technology isn't enough. Sometimes you need human intuition, human courage, and most importantly, the human ability to dance with chaos itself.